Check Podcasts. Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from the podcasting studios of the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. We are here, of course, living and working on the unceded ancestral territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples known to us as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. You can't listen to a newscast, watch a newscast, read a newspaper, pick up an article, go on social media without the housing issue that we're facing across this country and across this region being front and center all the time. Housing is created by some levels of government, the provincial government, the CRD. Sometimes housing is, of course, created by private developers and builders. But there are also nonprofit organizations involved in creating housing supply. And that's a big part of the solution for the problem we have to find right now. Today on Chamber Chats, we're going to chat with Virginia Holden, who is the lead at the Greater Victoria Housing Society. Virginia, hi, and welcome to Chamber Chats.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
So here's something we do quite often in Chamber Chats. We'll say, so let's say you meet somebody for the first time and they say, hi, what do you do? What's your answer?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good one, actually. So I lead a nonprofit housing organization that provides and builds affordable rental housing, mainly targeted to low and moderate income households. So that's everything from seniors and families, persons with diverse abilities. We also house newcomers, and then also working singles and couples. So we play a really, really important role in the region, and it's a pretty a fantastic job, one that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, and with the economy and inflation doing what it's doing, people who qualify for your services are increasing. That number is too. But tell me, when was this created? When did the society come to be and why?
Well, we've been around for a long time. We celebrated our 65th anniversary 2 years ago. So we actually predate the formation of BC Housing. And GVHS at the time was called the Victoria Senior Society. And it was brought together by a group of concerned individuals for seniors, low-income seniors aging in place in our community. So we've been around since then. We went through kind of evolution about 10 to 12 years ago, where we opened up our mandate, not just to look at seniors, but also bring in families and working couples and singles, but also to meet the needs of moderate income folks who, as you can tell now, are not being served by the private market.
Yeah, so 65 years ago, this was on the radar. I mean, I moved to BC 22 years ago, and the house costs were a bit shocking for me because I came from Ontario. So Victoria's always been sort of a premium place to live price-wise, right? But recognizing it 65 years ago, that's quite an insight, really, isn't it?
Well, there was a lot of programs during that time. So after the war, Canada had an issue with helping to resettle veterans and families, and it was a really big period of, looking to rebuild the country. And so that was around the formation of the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, and there was a real investment on building low and middle income housing. So, it would have been right around that time when the society was formed, and CMHC was, looking at helping nonprofits, buy land and create affordable housing. So that legacy has been around for a long time, and it was a big effort after the war to, resettle veterans and kind of start to rebuild the country after the war.
So zooming ahead to today, what kind of stuff are you doing right now to build more housing?
Well, lots and lots of things. So we have two types of housing which we build. So one is our subsidized housing stock. So this is kind of stock that we often do in partnership with BC Housing. So we have operating agreements there, and that stock is really focused on the low fixed income residents. So seniors who are on fixed income, OAS, CPP, but then also families who, are often an income assistance. So we have, a lot of our stock is around that, and we still work with BC Housing to create those types of units. Then we also have affordable rental housing, and that's stock that, we often, again, we still do in partnerships with governments, whether the federal government or the provincial government, where we get really low interest financing and then large grants. And then that helps us to keep the price of construction low. And then we can bring in rents that are lower than the private market can offer. So, we're trying to bridge that low, folks who are making $35,000 a year, to the moderate incomes, upwards of, families who are making $120,000 a year. And we're trying to build everything from studios to 4-bedroom units. And you can see there's a lot of need for that larger family type of housing.
Okay, so we're going to unpack some of that in a second here, but I think people also need to understand the volume of properties that you are involved with. Like how many units have you got in your portfolio?
We have just under 1,000 units, so we're hoping to crack that milestone actually this year, hopefully, or next. And we're over about 18 properties. So we've got properties in Souk, actually, which we just took over operations this year, and from everything from Souk to Brentwood Bay. So across those 18 properties, and really just focused on serving the Greater Victoria region.
Yeah, because you're the Greater Victoria Housing Society, and we are the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. So there's
That's
that
right.
alignment right there. I want to just talk a little bit more in detail. You mentioned families and seniors. What specifically is being built geared toward families?
Well, we do, again, in all of our buildings, especially our new builds these days, we do make room for these larger units. So our family housing is anywhere from the 2 bedrooms, especially if you're a single parent, and to our larger 4-bedroom unit townhouses. As you can imagine, there's immense demand. For that type of housing, but we do package them into our developments. So in some places, in Colwood, we've got them in a 6-story building. And then in places like our Town Lead development in Saanich, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more, we have a series of family townhouses around the back of the building. So we're looking at any ways we can to build that type of housing because it's in such dire need and across the region.
And you mentioned seniors too, of course, on a fixed income, which might be a pension income or something like that. And again, with inflation and prices being what they are these days, that's becoming more of a challenge, right? Tell me what you do specifically for seniors.
For seniors, again, because we started out as a seniors dedicated society, as I mentioned, about over 65 years ago, I would say almost half of our stock is dedicated to seniors. Because of that legacy, working to build and operate seniors housing, but again, we incorporate in our new developments, seniors as a major priority for redevelopment. So we have some buildings that are 55 plus. And we continue to try to meet that need in the community because again, if you look at the stats, seniors are, they've always been a population that has needed sort of like housing solutions, but that need isn't going away. It actually is increasing, and it's very difficult for seniors to find affordable housing in the community.
You've got some really interesting data on who can afford what according to what they're making, and I want to talk about that next. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is Virginia Holden. She's with the Greater Victoria Housing Society. So I know people are now watching and listening to this saying, okay, how do I get one of these units? How do I access the stuff that you're doing? Tell me about that process.
So there's two types of ways to access our housing. So if for our subsidized housing stock, that stock that's for low and fixed income seniors and families, the best way to get access to that housing is through BC Housing. So you go to their housing registry, make sure that you're meeting the income qualifications, you sign up as part of that registry, and then we pull from it. So that is similar, and most nonprofits across the province are using that registry to help fill that subsidized kind of social housing stock. For our affordable rental, that's something that we own and operate. And we do that, what all, most landlords do. We're using Facebook Marketplace, use Victoria to post. As you can imagine, we put up something and and it's not long before it's filled. And that's how you get access, or you can call our office, and we kind of keep a kind of a rolling list of folks that we know are in need of housing. But as you can imagine, those calls far outstrip what we have to offer. So there's a lot more demand out there than we can fill.
Yeah, and you have some future projects we're going to talk about in a second here. So you have this data chart that people are always saying, "Well, what can I afford? Here's how much I make. What can I actually buy?" Explain that to me.
So in terms of the data, I mean, it's just really, really clear here what folks can afford. So, I'm a senior, if we look at recent data, my annual income's really below $25,000 a year. So that means I can really only afford something around $600 a month, realistically. So you're either being served in the property, the private market, and you've been in a unit now for many years that's kind of been rent controlled. If you need to move, you're going back into the market and you're coming into face of, uh, studio suites for $1,500 or one bedrooms for $1,800. So that just doesn't match up with anything that you can afford. If you're making minimum wage, you really can only afford, just under $900 a month. Right. And so again, if you match that up with, what the going price is for, a new one bedroom on turnover, it's 1,800. So that math starts not to match up pretty fast. Lone parent families, you can really only afford about 900. And if you're, a couple, the average is, you can really only afford about $2,500 a month for housing. So if you line that up of what the true costs are, MLS, if you look at, home prices, the averages are, and this is even for last year, but $1.3 million. And so you need to have an annual income of about, $270,000 a year. So you can start to see where this math just doesn't add up as it relates, whether it be homeowner costs or average rental. And so thus you have a scenario where if you're in a place and you're paying X rent and your needs change, you can't move, right? You can't move because there's nowhere else to move to, and you could be paying double, if not more. And then for many folks, there's just no supply out there at all. So you're living precariously, whether with family, bunking with them for longer. But unfortunately, we do have families call us. With both parents working, who are living in camper vans and cars. That is a true reality, unfortunately, in this region. It's not the majority, but it is happening more and more than we've seen before.
You also have a chart that indicates the sort of the spectrum of the nature of housing that we have in this market. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think it's seven classifications, seven categories.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, the housing market is kind of subdivided into seven different types. So, you know, GVHS operates in that non-market band. So if the non-market is folks like us, nonprofits who are providing housing where it's often subsidized by governments. So, you're looking at everything from emergency shelters, transitional housing for families leaving intimate partner violence or have been at risk of homeless and they need extra supports before they kind of get, into more permanent housing. Then you have social housing, or subsidized housing that I've already talked about, where governments are playing a role in helping to, deal with the operating costs of that housing, to make sure that the rents are really low. And then non-market housing, which we call the affordable renter, where we're getting like grants, capital grants, to bring it to market at lower than what the private market would have in rents. And then the others, so that's where GVHS kind of lies, is in that social housing, subsidized housing, and the affordable housing non-market. The other side of the bench is more that market rental, where the private market is building rental. That's been the majority of where Canadians have found housing in the rental market is with the private market, and it plays a really, really important role. And then you get into sort of like higher income rental, where it's meeting that need of the upper moderate and higher incomes. Affordable home ownership is another area. And then you got market home ownership. So, your condos, your townhouses. But the other piece in here that is worth capturing is the co-op sector. And that co-op sector has played a really important role. If I talked about after the war, many were built where you can buy an equity stake. And that has played a really important role for families in the past. And I think we're going to see a little bit of a regeneration of that as governments start to invest a little bit more in cooperative housing.
In a number of other chamber chats, we've talked with various sectors about the supply chain issue and the cost of supplies and having labor. You're trying to build houses when
Yes,
the cost of materials is going up, having trouble
yes.
finding workers. How does that impact what you're trying to do?
Very much so. So, I mean, as nonprofit builders, we're developers, like everyone else. We have a different profit motive. We're serving kind of different. We have different missions and mandates for who we're going to serve, but we're impacted by the market, just like everybody else. So everything from supply chains, inflation, the increases in interest rates recently have really impacted housing builders across the country. You've seen lots of news recently of projects being stalled. We're in the same boat. And we've seen a major increase in the last year and a half on our construction costs. And again, we do have shovel projects that are shovel ready with permits, where we've worked with local governments for the last couple of years to, make sure we get those approvals in place. And we have those, and we just can't get started on them because they're now the cost per square foot is too much for us to be able to keep the rents affordable in the end, which is really what our main objective is to do always. So it's not simple. We're hopeful, once interest rates start to stabilize a little bit, some of the demand in the construction industry that government-backed affordable housing projects will be a good, really good place to have. Yeah, to tie up the construction industry, but it's not been easy going over the last year or two to make the math work.
Yeah. I want to talk about some of the buildings that are in plans right now in the planning stage and ones that are around town that you will probably recognize. We're going to do that next. On Chamber Chats today, we are speaking with Virginia Holden. I almost said Veronica again. Virginia Holden is with the Greater Victoria Housing Society. So let's just do a quick tour around town. Some of the buildings that are up right now that you are already operating. So tell me about 1780 Townley.
So Townley Place is a project that we opened up in December of 2020, so right smack in the middle of COVID. It was a redevelopment of a former property that we had owned. Again, social housing stock that was built after the war. It came to the end of its life. In this property, we did a major redevelopment, and more than doubled or tripled the amount of density on the site. So it's about 70 units overall. And it's a really interesting project. And I often bring attention to it because it's in a single family neighborhood. And there's a lot of concerns about developing a multifamily higher density in a single family neighborhood. There's a lot of concerns about that. But in the end, it just works so beautifully in that neighborhood. It's really complemented the neighborhood. And so the front building is about 50 units of seniors housing. And persons with diverse abilities. And then in the back, we have about 14 family townhouses, 3 and 4 bedroom townhouses. And I was just there yesterday giving a tour, and there's bikes and scooters, and there's a park across the street, there's a school. You can really see what a wonderful community is that's been created in that spot. So we'd love to do more of those. And I often highlight it because it's something that could be easily replicated in many parts in the region.
Yeah, community is the key word there, right? You're doing more than just building buildings and putting people in them. There's a culture that goes along with that in a community too. So you're on West Saanich Road. You're also, there's so much going on the West Shore. You're among that 330 Goldstream. Tell me about that one.
So 330 Goldstream, we opened up in the spring of 2021. That one is a really wonderful project to highlight because of the low carbon and energy efficiency and sustainability of the project. So it again is a 102 bed unit property. We did a mix of studios right up to 3 bedrooms in that property. So again, we're getting that mix of everybody from seniors and working singles and couples. Um, and what's fabulous about that property is it is it's built, if you're a building aficionado, it's built to passive house standards. So it's extremely energy efficient and low carbon. And at the time when it opened, it was the largest sustainable affordable housing site in Canada. So it's got all sorts of fabulous kind of building, really tight air, envelope. It has very high tech air exchangers. We're learning a lot through operating it, especially as our summers get warmer.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, nobody turns on their heat in that building.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see, and it's something that we've been committed to doing at GVHS as well. Not only meeting the housing needs in the region, but also be mindful that as we're building that housing, we're also addressing our climate needs in the region. So that's been an exciting project for us for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's affordable doesn't mean it's going to be built cheaply or shoddy. It's a project that you're involved with. It's been underway for quite some time. And if you drive on the Pat Bay Highway, when you get to the crossroads at Saanich Road, the Nigel project that's going on, if you're going north, it's on the right-hand side. That's a massive thing, but you guys are a part of that too, right?
We are. So the Nigel Valley is a really interesting partnership project that we've been working on for more than 7 years. So this is a partnership with BC Housing, ourselves, Broadmead Care, the
Garth Homer.
Garth Homer
Yeah.
Society, thank you. And I was going to say ICMH, but that's Island Community Mental Health. And so, what we're trying to do there is build an inclusive and complete community for many diverse populations. So we have a site on the property already, about 17, 18 townhouses that meet families. And our hope is to redevelop that property and we've started construction actually just last week on 70 units of affordable housing. And we're really excited to get started on that because it's been in the works for so long. But it's a real, example of what's needed around these partnerships to build that housing for populations that currently aren't being met by the private market or have special needs, especially in the case of Garth Homer and Broadmead Care and Island Community Mental Health.
Needless to say, this is very important work. There's more we could talk about, but we're kind of running out of time here. GreaterVictoriaHousing.org is the website where you can find out about all the things that we talked about here today. And also, more importantly, how you can help the society do what they do. Virginia Holden, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Virginia Holden is with the Greater Victoria Housing Society. GreaterVictoriaHousing.org is the website. Thanks for watching. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.